Alright. It looks like we are live. Although very quiet.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm gonna fiddle with audio settings just a minute. Can you all talk a little bit for me?
Oh. Hello.
Okay, you guys
Testing,
sound great.
testing.
We're good.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for a quick tech check. My name is Caitlin. I'm the Gatsby community manager, and we're excited today to have James from Auth0 join Obinna to talk about authentication in Gatsby. So I'll hand it over to both of you. Oh, and just a reminder, if you have any questions, please do pop those in the chat. All right, let's go.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Obinna Ekwuno. I'm a software engineer on the DevRel team at Gatsby. And today I'll be joined by my friend, James Quick, who's James, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I think we were just talking about this beforehand. Super excited for us to have this opportunity to collaborate because we've talked on Twitter, I guess, mainly for a couple of years, but this is the first time that we actually get to do something together.
Yay.
So yeah, yay. As Caitlin said, I work at a company called Auth0. I'm also a developer advocate. So my job is just to get out there and really engage in the community and earn respect in the community. And then in theory, just show people how to build cool stuff, which I think is going to be a big part of the demo today. It's one that I'm really excited about. It ties in Gatsby and Auth0 and actually Airtable as a backend. We'll talk about more of that stuff in a minute. Anyway, so yeah, I'm a developer advocate at Auth0. I've got the Auth0 Pride shirt on today.
Hey.
Wanted to rep that a little bit. But yeah, awesome. I'm excited to be here on the Gatsby channel. I'm a super big fan of Gatsby. So
thanks. So I think the best thing about DevRel is you could just, like you said, just build stuff and do whatever. They literally give you the power to experiment with stuff, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yep. And then I was kind of joking with someone recently as far as being a software developer. I've always been kind of the build 80 to 90% of something, and then as a DevRel person, rarely does stuff actually scale or go to production.
Yeah.
So you can just ignore the last 10%, and your stuff is good enough for the demos that you do.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So the way we're going to go, we will do the Auth0 stuff to show me how to do authentication and stuff, and then when we're done, we will then deploy this to Gatsby Cloud and then test out some awesome incremental builds just to show everyone how this works.
Sweet.
So, yeah. Awesome.
So let's maybe kicking off by talking about what we did in part 1.
Oh yeah.
Which was that just 1 week ago? I feel like that seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, it's actually
last
on
Tuesday.
the 7th, yes.
Yeah. So last time it was on the Auth0 channel, and it was Obinna as well as my teammate Tyler, and started to show off this kind of demo application that this is what you're seeing now is a more advanced version of that. But basically what the idea was is you would use Gatsby to, at build time, it would pull records from Airtable. I'll show you that in a second. And it would display those like you see here. So you've got 3 different people to follow. And I've been referencing these as influencers. I don't really like that word for this context, because I want it to just be people that you should follow, not big influencers. But anyway, so these are the records that we have inside of Airtable, and it's basically information like Twitter handle, name, and description, and then just a couple of tags that we associate with that person. And these are, for the most part, these are just kind of test pieces of data. So these are not necessarily accurate depictions of our skill sets, but inside of here, even though this page and this data is brought in statically with Gatsby, you get to use these filters. You can filter down who specializes in what. And the idea is I actually really want this to become a bigger project where lots of people on Twitter post who are your favorite people on Twitter to follow in JavaScript or something like that. So this would be a place for people to come and add people to it. And then other people who are just interested in who to follow can come and search through different categories and find a list of people to follow.
Oh, awesome.
And we didn't really that was basically all of the application functionality that we had in the last one, except for during the stream, you and Tyler walked through how to set up authentication in in Gatsby. And
Yeah.
I think we've already got it posted. Thanks, Gatsby JS.
Oh,
We're posting
thank
the
you.
link to that video. I've got this up here as well. So if you missed part 1, you can go back and check that on the Auth0 YouTube channel. And what I wanted to do was add a little bit more than just the ability to log in. I wanted to basically give the ability for a user to log in and then also contribute. So they could come to this ad page and they could add influencers. Again, I kind of want to change that branding there. But enter in the name, the Twitter handle, job title, and then select a few of these tags and submit it. And what that will do is add another record in Airtable. So I'm curious if anyone has used Airtable in the past, let me know in the comments. But this is a really like one of the quickest, easiest ways to basically set up a database that you can store persistent data in.
We use this at Gatsby for storing stuff. So this is nice.
Okay. Yep. And someone asked me this morning, would you consider this to be a headless CMS? And it doesn't quite fall into that category, but you can use it the exact same way. It's a little bit different, but you're still like in this case, that's how we're using it. It's just pulling in this data statically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Obinna, you might want to add to this a little bit. I think what we want to show is the power of Gatsby as more than just a static site generator.
Yeah. I was just
talk about that.
I was going to say that right now. So we're doing like these streams like to like show that, mostly we have a lot of demos on how Gatsby works with like blogs and CMSs. And then, so we don't want to like sell the idea that, oh, look, you could just use Gatsby to make a really nice blog very quick. So we're trying to like add some functionalities like authentication and authorization, like we're going to see right now. And how like that ties into like what Gatsby can like do, some app-like features. So I think the way the aim of this is like for you to think about Gatsby and say, if I want to do something in Gatsby, because Gatsby is basically like I like to call it personally, I like to call it like a faster React, but kind of like, so it's if you're trying to do like whatever it is you're trying to do in Gatsby, think of it as, can I do this in React? And then if the answer is yes, then obviously you can do that in Gatsby. So
yeah, and I think like we talked about this too. It's almost worth it to use Gatsby in every scenario because you can take advantage of static page generation, but you also don't have to. And one of the things that Gatsby gives you by default is automatic routing, which in React you would have to install React Router DOM and configure your routes. With Gatsby, you just put a file in the pages directory and now you have a route.
Yeah, and also like because Gatsby has like accessibility at the like heart of it, because like we're really passionate about making the web for everyone. You have like we use Reach Router, which is like a little more accessible than like React routers, and like we use the link components to, like link stuff internally without having to like always like refresh the page, so you can actually just link stuff internally. But like if you're trying to like do some external fetching of like a link, you have to use like the anchor tag. But yeah,
and we'll hint if you stick around to near the end of the stream, we'll have a demo of that in Gatsby Cloud, and it'll show you the Lighthouse scores. And hint, they're pretty good by default with Gatsby. So what we're trying to add here is going into more of the dynamic capabilities of Gatsby, where anything in React you can also do in Gatsby. And so what we have is this dynamic form where people can fill out information after they log in. So we make that a requirement that the user is logged in, and then they can see the form. And in this case, they will be able to submit, and it will submit to a serverless function. Now, this might be new for a lot of people. So if you have questions about serverless functions and how those work, please ask in the chat. But basically, I won't show you the code yet. Basically, serverless functions are functions that you can host in Netlify. They become AWS Lambda functions, and it's literally just a function file that you upload into your source code. And Netlify takes care of all of the rest. So we don't have to worry about anything other than Netlify does it for us.
Sometimes I want, like, when naming these things, like, so you say serverless function, Lambda function, and people are wondering, like, what's that? But like, like you just said, it's kind of like a function that just does some awesome stuff for you.
Yeah, you don't have to create your own like full node environment. You don't have to host your own node environment. You don't have to configure it. It's literally a function that you give Netlify, and they do all of that stuff for you. So it's really, really nice, especially with building apps in like the Jamstack ecosystem. The fact that so much of that is taken care of for you, you just add in a function and you can do a lot of really cool stuff.
Awesome.
Brad in the comments is asking, he said he'd like to see the unauthenticated behavior when you try to reach ad influencer.
Oh,
So I can demo that right now. If we log
yeah.
out of
Yeah, let's do
this
that.
and then go to the route ad influencer, this will trigger. Actually, I changed this a little bit in my demo for a user experience thing. In the previous demo, that would automatically trigger the login. I
Yeah.
decided to change this for this demo to just redirect you back to the homepage.
Yeah, maybe if he checks the video, I think there was a point where we did that just to see
Mhm.
what happened. So the link is in the chat. So if you
Yep.
check that out, you'd see where we try to access routes without being authenticated.
Yep.
Then yeah.
Yep. And there's inside of the source code, if you look at that as well, which I can share
Yeah.
that now too. There's a protected route component, so you can look at
Yeah.
how we handle that.
So the protected route component basically just checks, oh, if is the user authenticated, are you logged in? If you're not, this is what it does. So yeah, so but we handled that in the last
Mhm.
stream. So if you check out that video, I'm sure you would see the behavior.
Yep. But I think, yeah, that kind of covers the overview of how that works, which is cool. By the
Yeah.
way, Chris, one of our mutual friends, Chris on Code, is in the chat.
Hey,
What's
hi
up, Chris?
Chris.
um, so let's see. So yeah, that's kind of our goal, and we only want to allow this to happen for people that are logged in. So I'm going to log back in here. And obviously, when I log in, we now show the ad tab.
Admin.
This is in the final or a deeper version than what we're going to do today. So this also has an admin tab, which I won't talk about. But we want to be able to do the ad part. And
Yeah.
for this to work, we have the user authenticated in the application. But then if we create a serverless function that will then save records to our Airtable database, we want to have some way to validate that the incoming request to the serverless function should be able to do that thing. So we have to have some way to validate that the request, somebody didn't just put a request in Postman and just send it over to the API, because they can do that.
Yeah.
So this is where like the authorization aspect of building on part one, where we did authentication. Now we're looking at authorization, where we're taking a logged in user, we're getting something from Auth0 in this case that will basically give credit to that user when it makes a request to the backend. And we'll talk about this more, but that comes in the form of an access token. And eventually that access token will be in the form of a
Okay.
JSON web
Data.
token. And we'll see
Awesome.
all of that in more detail here in a second.
Yay.
So let's go. I've got this running locally. Here's the local version. And what I'm starting with is this branch. Let me make sure that you can see this. So on
Yeah.
that
So yeah.
repo that I sent, I'm starting with the Gatsby Stream Part 2 starter. So that's the branch that we're starting with. There's also a Gatsby Stream Part 2 finish, so people can get the finish code for this demo as well. So the thing that I want to start by doing is inside of our form for adding an influencer, kind of look at really quickly what the code does. It does a little bit of validation on these inputs. It makes sure that all those inputs are there. If it's not, then it sets an error message, and you can kind of see that
Okay.
flash. And then it gets the information from the form itself, and then it makes an HTTP request using the built-in fetch API to send that post data to the serverless function. When you create serverless functions and host them in Netlify, whatever the name of that file is part of the URL that you call, and then you prefix that with .netlify/functions. So this allows us to be able to make the request from Gatsby on the front end to our serverless function, which is running locally now, and we run this with some Netlify stuff. So we run this with Netlify dev, which will run both Gatsby as well as the serverless
And
functions, so that we can talk
okay.
across to each other.
Hmm.
I'll give that a second to load up. And while that's loading, the thing I want to show, and we did a little bit of this last time, is in the last video, we set up the Auth0 hook. So there's a use Auth0, and I'm going to
Okay.
autocomplete some IntelliSense in here, I think. Did that do IntelliSense? I'm not sure if it did. There it is. So it's
Yeah.
importing this use Auth0 hook, and then we can use this, and we can get a property from that called get token silently. Hopefully I spell it correct.
Oh yeah.
And that's a property that use Auth0 returns. It's a property, but it's also a function. So we can call this function to get our access token. This is the thing that we want to use to tell the server, hey, we should be able to make the request that we're making. And there's other things that you can get from that as well. So you can get user information, and you can see that in like the is it profile? What did we call that page? Account. In the account page, you can see that we're getting the user and a loading property and is authenticated. So that's how we're able to actually show information about the user.
Sure.
So what I want to do, this is really just for demo purposes, is to show you what this access token looks like. And so inside of the handle submit, what I'm going to do is just console log, and then I'm going to use await. So get token silently returns a promise. So I'm going to wait that the value that comes back from that promise. And then I just want to log that thing out. That way you can see what Auth0 gives us by default.
The access token looks like.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome.
So let's save that, and we'll come back over to our page. We'll go to the ad, and then I don't want to actually post any data, so I'm just going to submit it. It'll throw an error saying that all these fields are required, which is good. That's what it should do. And then also in the console, what we should see is this token thing here. And it doesn't really mean anything for us. It's basically just like a random string.
Oh, cool.
And so what we would do in theory is we would take this token and we would pass it along in our request to the serverless function. And the serverless function would then have to validate whether or not that access token is legit, basically.
So a question would be, can we use this directly to like Auth0 without a serverless function? And like what are like the implications of doing that?
Yeah, so this token specifically, and this will tie into Brad's question of, is this a JWT or JSON web token? It's not. And the important impact of that is if we use this token and send it to the serverless function, the serverless function itself would have to call Auth0 every time with that token to ask whether or not it's a valid auth token or access token.
Yeah.
That's something we don't really want, right? Because that means every request that we make to the serverless function then makes a request to Auth0.
Yeah.
So by default, Auth0 will return this thing, which is called an opaque access token. That means it has to be like, you have to call Auth0 to verify it. Okay. So that's what it does by default. But you can, not my home screen, but inside of our configuration for our Auth0 object.
Yeah.
Inside of here, we've got two properties that we're referencing, Auth0 domain and Auth0 client ID. Those are things that are basically going to, let me log in and show you my Auth0 dashboard here. My Google account. Hopefully I don't get too many personal emails from people on the stream.
I always say take the screen out.
Yeah. It's all right. Whatever people want to email me is fine. Right, but inside of this tenant, which is called who to follow, tenants are basically kind of a collection of applications of some sort. So you can have front end applications, you can have back end applications.
I was about to ask what that was.
Yep. And then you can see in here, I've got the who to follow front end. So this is where I basically registered that single page application, and you can see that it has a domain and a client ID. So those are the two things. I scrolled the wrong way again. Those are the two things that we're using to configure the Auth0 client. But then we can add a third thing called the audience. And our audience is basically saying, if a user logs in this application, the access token that comes back, where do we want to send that access token? Okay. So the audience in this case is going to be an API that's registered inside of Auth0 as well.
Oh,
so
awesome.
I've registered the who to follow API. I've got this inside of Auth0, and then it's got this identifier here. And this is basically arbitrary. Like you can kind of name it whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
And then that is going to become the audience in this configuration. So one of the things I want to make sure to do, and this is a little tricky to explain why, so I'll kind of gloss over a little bit, but I want to make sure I log out, because the next time I log in, it's going to change the requirements for that login. So So I don't want to have any
Okay.
conflicts with the
Oh,
previous
okay.
session that I already had, if that makes sense.
So every time you update the API, you need to like log out so that it doesn't have that clash.
It's more the configuration in here. So essentially, we
Okay.
included the audience to then talk to the API.
Yeah.
Now we need to update the way we configure this client, and then because of that, we'll log out and log back in.
Okay, gotcha.
Sweet. So let's save that. Let's let it refresh, and then I'm going to make sure. I think that auto refresh, but just to make sure, go ahead and log in, and go ahead and I think Chris said he was going to send me interesting cat facts to my email. So feel free if you have any fun, interesting cat facts to send, please send them my way. All right. So what I want to show is now if I go back to the form and I submit, now this token becomes this really long string that especially doesn't mean anything. But actually, if you're familiar with what a JSON web token is, you can see it's got three parts. It's got a header part here. Then it's got a period. Then it's got the body part. And where does the period end on here?
I think
there's a second period somewhere that I can't make out just yet.
Yeah.
And then the last part is basically a signature there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen it close to the B. Yeah.
If you see it, that's good enough.
Yeah.
So what I want to show is JWTs, JSON Web Tokens, they actually have data embedded in them. So we have a service that we created called JWT.io. Doesn't have anything necessarily to do with Auth0 specifically. It's just a tool that you can use to decode JWTs if you paste in the JWT there. So with this tool, I have the ability to decode what's in here. And this has a couple of different pieces of information. One is like the sub, which in our case is the unique identifier for the user. And in this case, it has a list of permissions. That's kind of a part 3 to this, so we won't get into permissions today.
Yeah.
Anyway, just kind of basically showing that to answer Brad's question, yes, by adding an audience, it then changes the return value of the access token to be a JWT. Cool. All right, so back in the code, what we want to do now is for every request that we make to our serverless function, we want to pass that JWT along. And it becomes what's called a bearer token, a bearer access token. And so we need to add this in a specific way. So I'm going to copy the code that I had above for getting the token. Okay. So if we pass all the validation, then I've got my to-dos in here. So let's get a reference. Const token equals, let's get a reference to that token like this. And then inside of the fetch request, we now need to pass another option. So if you've never seen fetch, we're basically specifying the URL that we're sending to, and then an object with the options for that request. And then inside of here, we need to specify headers. And headers is an object that will then have a property called authorization.
Authorization.
Yep. And then inside of authorization, and I'm using ES6 template literal strings so that I can use variables right inside of it. But a bearer token is bearer in space and then the value of the actual token itself. So this is the ES6 template literal aspect of this is I've got a string bear and then I interpolate the value of that token right there in the string.
Cool.
And then Brad's asking, so that can be sent along to the serverless function and the user can be authorized, comma, dope. I'm assuming that's his response that he's impressed with what's going on.
It's like, yeah.
So yes, that's exactly right. So with this JWT, now when we make our request, now we've included it in our headers as an authorization header, and then we specify bear space. And Brad's also wondering why they chose to do it that way. I don't know the specific reasons, but it is in the spec. So how you send access tokens, bear access tokens, this is how you set it up. So,
cool.
So what I would like to do is let me open up the add influencer function. So this is the thing, basically an endpoint that will handle the incoming request and then do whatever. And in this case, we're getting the information out of the body and then we're adding a record to Airtable. And again, if you have questions about it, ask. There's also the source code if you have like questions about Airtable and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to start by when this request comes in, I want to run or log out event.headers. Mainly, I just want to prove that this header is actually coming through to the request.
Okay. Yeah.
So we've got all of that saved, and we'll come back over to the app in here and refresh this just to make sure I've got everything. And then open up the add tab. And Brad was saying earlier, since he's being active in the chat, Brad was saying he would like to be included in this as well. So I'll add Brad Garapi.
Awesome.
And Brad, give me two things in the chat: your Twitter handle and your description or your title. And we have to like suffer the Twitch delays of a few seconds of how long it takes for him to get it. All right, so just Brad Garapi is the handle. I'll paste that in. And then I forget, like software developer at Adobe, I think is what he is. And we can update this front end end developer at Adobe. And
I just went ahead and followed him because
sweet. Getting Brad some follows on his engagement here.
Yep.
We've got one question here from IDZN7 of where is the information stored? This is all stored in Airtable. So that's where we're storing all of the information.
Oh, yeah.
And let's go ahead and click submit, and we'll see we need to select a tag. Brad, I'll come back and we can update these tags to be more official later on, but I'll go ahead and submit with just the Gatsby tag. It says success and admin will review. The reason there's a review process is I don't want anyone to just be able to add anything. I want them to add it, and then we can go back and approve it as an admin later on. So again, that's kind of a part 3 of this, but that way we control the data that gets out there.
Cool.
So now let's look in the logs, and we see these are all the headers, including authorization, and then including the bearer token.
Bearer. Yeah.
And you see the actual JWT. I think the question about what Airtable is, it's AIR, like air breathing table. So airtable.com, this URL up here. That's where we're storing all the information. Yeah, thanks for the clarification there. All right, so there's 2 different parts, and I want to wrap up this part in just a few more minutes so that we can make sure we get to the Gatsby cloud part of this, because I know Obinna and I are both really excited about that.
Yay.
There's 2 different parts. Now that we know we're getting the access token, we need to fully parse out this token. And this is just kind of like string logic. So we would get the value associated with the authorization key. We would run a split to split by space. So a split on a string will separate everything by whatever character you determine is appropriate. In this case, a space. And so we would get back an array of 2 things. The first one being the bearer string, and the second one being the actual JWT. So that's how we could get the actual token. And then we have to actually validate that JWT is JSON Web Token is formatted correctly and it hasn't been tampered with. And the way we do that is a little bit tricky, but I want to show that if you're familiar with like cryptography and public and private keys and things like that, if you've ever set up like SSH keys, that's a little bit beyond the scope of this. But one of the things we need is an ID, or excuse me, a key from Auth0 that we can use to then decode this JWT. So Auth0 will use a private key to encode it, and then we can use one of the private keys to decode it. And the way this works is this is actually a standard. This is not Auth0 specific. This is a standard of being able to expose the public keys. Anyone can get to this in your browser. People that are watching now, you could actually go to the site. And this is basically the who to follow. That's my domain. So that's my tenant name there. .auth0.com/.well-known and then jwks.json. So in this case, JWKS is JSON well-known. Right, I'm blanking on the S. Anyway,
let me help
go
you.
ahead. Yep.
Let me help you Google that.
Sweet.
I'm seeing JW. What?
JWKS.
Oh, okay.
And a couple of comments in the chat. Vishan Sani. Hopefully that's close.
JSON Web Key Sets.
Yes. Okay. JSON Web Key Set, and then the WK is for the well-known in the previous part.
Oh, okay.
Cool. So is there a specific reason to use Airtable? No, it's cool and fun and easy, and that's why. And then a comment about asymmetric encryption. Yes, that gets into like the public and private key thing, which is beyond the details of that is beyond the scope of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to get one of these keys and we want to use that to validate the token. So there's a JSON web token package on NPM that we're going to use. And when you call the validate or verify, which one? Need to double check. Yeah, JSON JWT verify. The two things you need to pass it are the token itself, the token string, and then the secret, which in this case is a public key that we get from Auth0. And that's a standard. So it's not Auth0 specific. That's just kind of how you would get your public keys, regardless of which provider you use. So I'm going to cheat just a little bit here. And I've already got utils directory in here with auth in it. And I've got some extra things that we don't care about. But the one thing I do have is a function that will check a header for a valid token. So this will do the parsing of that authorization header. So remember,
is this boilerplate code or?
This is not. So this is it's boilerplate in the sense of like you do this once and then it's just there. You don't have to do it again. But this is code that I wrote.
Oh, gotcha.
So this is the logic to basically parse out that access token. So remember we talked about it's bare and then space. And if you do a split, then you get the second.
Then you get the second one.
Yes. Yep. So this would give me the actual access token. If there's not one, then we throw an error to say unauthorized, right? And then the other part is if we haven't already gotten the signing key, so that's the key from Auth0. If we haven't already gotten that, go ahead and get a new one or go and get it and then use that key to then run a decode using JWT. So there's a couple of different steps up in here, but what we're doing is parsing the JWT itself, and then we're getting a key to validate that JWT with, and then we just call verify to see whether or not that thing is a good access token, a valid access token.
Cool.
Have questions about that, feel free to throw them in the chat now. Feel free to reach out later on if you're interested. I'd love to talk about that more. But just for kind of demo sake, I thought it was easier to just kind of put in some boilerplate code here.
Yeah.
So the last thing we'll do is inside of our add influencer function, what we want to do is let's get, what's the name of this function? Let's call this function. Let's bring it in from our, is it back one? Oh, I'm totally doing this wrong. This is supposed to be a require. I'm mismatching syntax. So this is in node. This is a require of that file. I think it's just here. All right, utils and then /auth. So we're pulling in this check header for valid token, and then we'll just use it. So in this case, what we'll do is we'll use a try catch, because remember, if it's not a valid one, it will throw an error. And then we'll call, we'll say const user equals check header for valid token. And that thing will return a promise because it is marked as async. So we will then await that to make sure we get that back. And at that point, we could log out who the user is, and then also make sure to add a catch for any errors.
So errors.
Yep. And this is something that gets skipped over a lot in demos. So I try to make sure to show that is something can go wrong all the time. So you want to make sure you handle it. So if there's an error, what we're going to do is just return back an unauthorized message. So status code of 401, and then a body of JSON.stringify, and then an object that says error unauthorized.
Cool.
So if we try to validate that token and it's not valid, we will just short circuit. We'll go ahead and get out of this function. We'll return back with the unauthorized status code.
Mm-hmm.
So all right, this is where like the nerves get going, because this is the final demo, and hopefully this works as we expect. So let's try to come back over to the demo, and we'll come over to our ad, and I'll just do dummy data here. So excuse this dummy data. Let's submit this, and now we actually got an unauthorized, which means I'm missing something in the parsing of this. And I think, see, cannot read authorization of undefined. Are we passing? We're not. We need to pass the headers in here. So we want to pass the headers to the function so it can parse out everything. Now, again, the nerves are going, so we'll see if it works this time around. All right, let's try this one more time. We can actually just stay on this page, not even refresh, because the back end refreshed, the front end didn't, or doesn't need to. So let's try to send again, and we get a success, and admin will review.
Yay.
And if we look in the logs, we can actually see this is the JWT, that information that we saw in JWT.io. We can see that here. And then if we look in Airtable, you can see that it added this new record, the test record, also added Brad Garapi. The only thing that's not happening is we're not approving them yet. So this is where anyone can actually log into this demo and they can submit stuff. But then an admin later on will have to go back and approve before it actually goes live to the site.
What's going on? Oh.
Yep.
Cool.
So any questions or comments, any thoughts on that process there? Again, I think I haven't figured out the best place to do this. I might do this next week on the Auth0 channel of just doing a part 3 of adding on extra permissions and showing you how to do the like approval dashboard. So where you can actually in the GUI go and approve. You can see an example of that here. So under admin, you can see it's going to pull all those records that are yet to be approved.
Oh, cool. I don't really have like questions. Let's check the chat. Any questions?
Looks like we're good. One person commented about using FaunaDB with Netlify functions. FaunaDB is awesome. FaunaDB is super cool. So I imagine that's been a breeze to work with as well.
Yeah. I haven't ever used FaunaDB, but maybe
I hear lots of good things.
Any recommendations on how to get started with Netlify functions? I usually just check out the documentation if I'm trying to get started, because I feel like, the first source of truth is from like documentation, and then if that is in,
and Brad's also saying if you have the Netlify CLI installed on your computer, you can run Netlify function create, and it has a bunch of templates for serverless functions, which is really nice.
Neat. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, Brad's been all over this. He's been great at this kind of stuff. We've had a lot of things to talk about with serverless. Taylor, if you have other questions about that, I can send you some specific resources later on. I'll grab some links and send them your way. If you remember, send me a message somewhere. I'm James Q Quick on everything. And then Brad sharing his article there too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So yesterday, let's what you're saying?
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say how yesterday I asked you what the Q was in the name was, because I thought it was really cool. Like, how do you have a middle name that starts the same letter as your last name? So.
Yep. Yeah. So my middle name is Quentin, so I'm James Quentin Quick, and we talked about yesterday that there's a NFL player. I don't know if he's still in the NFL, but at least was in the NFL, named James Quick. Yeah. So my SEO on James Quick was shot. Like you can't find me at all. But if you search James Q Quick, you can find me.
Yeah, it's kind of like a guy having the same name as Michael Jordan. It's like,
yep. Yeah, you're never gonna.
Why would you do that? Yeah. So let's move to like put this on Gatsby Cloud.
Sweet. And as setup for that, I'm going to.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to shut this down, and I'm going to check out my master branch, because I think that's what will connect. Actually, I can just reset all of these changes again. I think we pasted in that final branch so people can go and find the finished branch if they need it. And then I'm going to check out.
Cool. So while you're doing that, I'll just say a bit about Gatsby Cloud. So Gatsby Cloud is like the best way to like create and like update and develop like Gatsby sites, because it kind of puts together like more emphasis on like the Gatsby content mesh, and like also makes creating platforms and integrating with CMSs really super easy. So it's like we will see, we might not set up with a CMS because we already have like a Gatsby site we're trying to put on Gatsby Cloud so that we can leverage on the existing features like incremental builds and previews. And it also offers you like faster builds when you're actually hosting your sites on Gatsby Cloud, because like who's better to know how to handle a Gatsby site than Gatsby, you know? So yeah, so it helps with like integrations, faster integrations with like CMSs, like we would see. Or I think we're trying to do like another stream that will demo like this properly. But let's put this up on Gatsby Cloud.
Yeah.
So
and one comment before we do that, just a parallel here. We talked about like the ability of Gatsby to be really dynamic, but then also have the static generation of pages.
Mm-hmm.
So this homepage here is, and this is airing out because I killed the server, but the homepage is static. So this is at build time pulling information from Airtable. You could pull it from any other headless CMS or any other data source at all. So it's statically at build time generating this page with this data. What the interesting part of that approval process for records that get added in this demo specifically is when we approve a record, we also then need to trigger a rebuild of our site so it gets the latest information on this homepage.
Oh,
so that's where the incremental builds here would be super, super helpful for those to be faster and faster.
Oh, and also what happens is like when you build like your when you get like all the information from like CMSs, Markdown, any data source you want to like get your information from and build it with Gatsby, Gatsby parses it to like the browser as like a React application, and then you can like do all the deploys you want. So let's create like, so I'm just going to guide you through this.
Yeah, feel free.
Let's create a new site. So if you didn't have a Gatsby site, then you go through like I don't have a Gatsby site and click on all the options, which is like a really just click setup thing. So yeah, we already have a Gatsby site. So let's go to the next.
And I can testify to those options. They're super, super cool for anybody that's curious. We did a stream. The first stream we did on the Auth0 channel was actually in Gatsby Cloud, setting up a project that used Data CMS and Gatsby and was automatically connected to Netlify. And it was super cool. So if you're interested in that, like checking out some of the templates that they have, those are really great also.
I was just saying, like, today I did a build, and every time I use Gatsby Cloud, I just say, oh my God, this is a really awesome tool. And this is not just me selling like the product. it's just really nice because you literally see like builds like go fast for like a really large site. And we'll also see what like incremental builds does with like build time. So let's go on like the next. Then we have to find this.
The suggestion is like covering it up.
Yeah. It's like who to follow.
There we go.
Yeah. So here you want to like your production branch. So mostly your production branch is like where you want to deploy to. And then with the base directory, for example, it's optional. But if you have like a default directory where your builds go to, like for example with Gatsby, like the public directory, then that would be like where you impute that. So now we're just going to use the master. So let's just go to next.
Sweet.
Then we are not using a CMS here, so it might be tricky to. We're not using like a CMS that's integrated with like Gatsby already, so it might be tricky to like see how incremental builds work because of currently incremental builds only works with these CMSs. So we're still like working on rolling out incremental builds for code changes and stuff. So let's scroll down. I think we'll skip
and
this.
just skip that one. Yeah. And someone, I think it was Chris on Code, asked me earlier if I would consider Airtable to be a headless CMS. And in some cases, it's like the same thing. Like it's really similar.
Yeah.
It's not. I wouldn't specifically consider it to be that way, but it certainly could be.
Yeah. Let's
And
see.
and
Um,
here's one of my favorite features that I tweeted, or I think I have like a scheduled tweet about it. This is so cool to me. So one of the worst things about actually having something in production is that you have to copy and paste like each individual environment variable.
yeah.
Gatsby allows you to bulk upload this, and I should have. Let me actually see if I have it copied from earlier. So I'm gonna have to pull this screen off of
Oh yeah, for sure.
off for a second. So let me take this page, and everybody can look at my dashboard or my desktop with all of my pictures and stuff on it. And I'm also gonna have to grab the source code and bring it over here, because basically what I'm gonna do is all of the information that's in my .env files, I am just gonna copy that .env, and this is
and then upload.
Yep. And this is so cool. It's like overwhelmingly cool for me, because it's really a pain to do this if you have to paste environment variables every time.
So I did something funny yesterday. I was working with Contentful, and I was copying the preview access token as the deploy, and then, like, that was what I was trying to use, and then Contentful was giving an error like, oh, we don't understand what this is because like you haven't set up previews. And I was like, no, this is supposed to work. And then after like an hour, and I went to get dinner, and I got back, I was like, oh, so copying all of those things like individually can really make things complicated.
It's not ideal. Let me shuffle this code back over and open this back in full screen. So it's hiding the environment variables now.
Oh, okay.
But for both the build environment and the preview environment, I just copy and pasted my .env file over. Yeah. Bulk environment variables for the win. Thank you, Gatsby.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to create this site. So let's create this site. And let's wait for it to build.
Sweet. So this is it's automatically going to go and pick up all the code from the master branch, and then go ahead and trigger a build. And so we'll wait and see how long that takes. And then
maybe for a new maybe next stream, we could like use like one of those CMSs that Gatsby has, like it's really coupled with like those CMSs to make sure like incremental build works. Because that would be like something really cool to like show. Because I have like a tweet. I'm going to link that here so that.
Yeah, actually, if you want to send the tweet, I can pull it up on my page too, since I'm
cool.
I'm sharing my screen.
Cool.
I'll grab that.
Chat.
And this tweet was based on like you set up incremental builds, and these are the time changes that you saw in here.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, so you can see that I did the first build and I got like a 39 seconds build on like, and this is like a platform that has like a lot of blog posts, say between like 50 to 100. And then then I did like a small change on like 2 blog posts to like see how that's going to go. And then you see the build time went down to like 11 seconds. So why this happens is when incremental build happens, Gatsby has the first build is the longest because it has to have a baseline to like compare to, and then you can have like those data changes. And then then if you go down to like the second screenshot.
Can I tab through it? Nope. Is it in like the thread?
Yeah, the thread. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. You can also see that. So I did like a code change where I just went ahead and like refactored like a bunch of like functions, and then commented out like some other imports that were not used. Just clean up the code, adding comments there. So the thing with code changes because currently, because we're still rolling out like some of these things, so code changes will like trigger like a full build. But because you're like hosting on like Gatsby Cloud, you have like some added optimizations. So this build, this is a full build, but you would notice the difference between the first build and this build, which is still like the same whole site running again. So you would see like the first build took 39 seconds when I did the incremental builds, 11. And then when I did like a full build again, you see like the 27 seconds. So like you can see it's really neat stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier. It's really easy to be excited about stuff or excited about the place you work when the products that you work with or for are really, really good.
It's like I love this GIF that says magic. Just so this guy do it. Yeah. So let's check on the build. It should have been done by now.
Yeah, let's go over to this tab. Looks like it's still running at 50 seconds. Which is still relatively short time. So we'll let that finish. One of the comments I was gonna make about this for, like you mentioned, code changes actually then kind of potentially make it become like a full rebuild. And part of the implications of that, if you're using, like you have if you have static pages, for example, and you change something for your blog post, those are static pages. If you change how that stuff is rendered in your JSX, then all those pages have to be re-rendered again, statically built again.
So what counts as like code changes is like, because whatever goes to Git is a code change. So if you use if you're serving MDX on like your blog, you're using like some Markdown, all of those things. You change like the components, those things. But Matt works out, Matt Kane, trying to pull up a blog post he wrote about how to make incremental builds faster for you. 6 reasons why Gatsby incremental builds can be slow and how to make them fast. So mostly people, like what people would say, oh, it's not really fast for me. It's mostly because of like some little additions that you need to make to what you're building. So I'm going to link this in the chat.
And you also have a couple of questions, I think, specifically around just metrics, but I think Gatsby JS has handled that. And I think it looks like there's maybe some more data to come, some official data to come on the time savings that would be useful for people.
There are metrics on the time savings for incremental builds when having e-commerce store.
And then do you have a link to that article that you can send in here?
Oh, okay. I just put the link to the article. Then what's the best scenario to generate incremental builds? Like if you have small changes, should we trigger builds, or it's best to have no changes? Well, if you're serving on every change, so if you have like small changes so think of this scenario where you're running like a news agency. So you have like 1,000 bloggers like all the time. So you can't really say, oh no, don't push your builds until this person has pushed theirs. If everyone like does whatever changes you do, like it's not going to have like a huge cost on build time. Like everything will have to build as from scratch. So funny story is I used to blog. I used to work for like a blogging agency back in uni, and every time you put a blog post, it takes a long time. So we had to schedule like, oh, I'm posting in the morning. You're going to have to, because there were a lot of articles there. But like if we had incremental builds, like our lives would have been easier.
So did you have to, like, if you're publishing at 10, you had to like build at 9 or something?
Yeah. So wow. So we could see. I think we're done.
Yeah, and
we can see.
Go ahead.
Look at those lighthouse scores.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, and there's like very little optimization inside of the source code that I have. I actually still have a couple of warnings from Gatsby for accessibility, which is probably where that 97 comes from instead of 100. Yeah, so those are a couple of things that I need to address. But without me doing me doing very little targeted in those directions, these are just amazing numbers.
Yeah. I love that. I love that Gatsby does this thing where if you don't use an alt tag in an image, it says, "Hey, you didn't do this," because we need to really take accessibility seriously. So if you look at the build time, it's like 59 seconds.
Yep.
So let's just go and like change something the code so that we can have like build time to compare with.
Any particular kind of change that would be?
No, just we could anything that we have to like commit.
Okay.
If you go and change like stuff in the site metadata, maybe not code, I don't know, anything.
Yeah.
Or we can just add. We can remove influencers.
Well, I've got to remove that in a lot of places.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, changing that in the title would be good. Who to follow, and then I also changed this to a list of cool developers on Twitter that you should follow.
Awesome.
All right, so
let's push that.
And I'm using some aliases in Git to kind of shorten how I commit stuff. So it's just it's your basic git add everything, git commit. Added some extra text. Oops, if I type it correctly, and then GGP is my push, so that'll push it back up.
You have some really cool aliases.
Yeah, these are built in. If you use ZSH, these are built in with ZSH. So you can check that out. It looks like Gatsby's already picked this up, so it's running the second build.
Yeah, and like logging into this, you can log in with like your GitHub account. So like we saw, if you have already set up like the if you have already set up like the repo, then it would just use the repo. Or if you didn't have like a project set up already, what Gatsby is going to do is just it's going to log into your GitHub with your permission, of course, and then like authenticate and then get you back there, so that whenever it is you set up, you put the name for your project, automatically just creates that repository for you. So Sweet. All you need to do is like literally just click on what you're trying to use, go to the CMS, do that, and it comes built with like a URL, and you can also set up like hosting if you want. I think we have like 5 minutes.
Probably not enough time, but I can say, like in the past, I've used Gatsby Cloud with like those starter projects integrated with Netlify really, really well.
This is weird. This is taking more time than it should.
Yeah, running the first time, and this is still with like it's not using any of those the CMSs that you mentioned earlier that are like, kind of highly optimized.
Maybe. Anyways, let's like let me see.
You've got a couple of questions in the chat also, if you want to take a look at those.
Link to the post. Good stuff. There's a scenario where there are multiple triggers being fired off. Many reporters submitting the post in GNC. Is there any build?
The batching question. That's a good question.
That's a really good question. I should check that. I haven't really thought about that scenario, but like I don't think it would have any implications on that. So yeah, I'll build this done, but like for some reason it's not lower than the first one, but like but then you can see that it's still built like pretty fast. So let's look at like hosting.
Okay.
Like, just in case.
Set up hosting.
You just do it now. Yeah.
Cool.
Then
Netlify. Cool. Netlify is amazing.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and connect. And I guess Gatsby Cloud can have permission.
Yeah. Thank you. And so you just put in I think it would say something about alphanumeric or so. But
does it have to be lowercase? We'll see if
I don't know. Check. Yeah, alphanumeric. Yeah. This happens to me a lot. So that's how I know.
Yep, fair enough. And then here and create. And
there
I can actually go ahead and
you go to Netlify.
Yeah. Let's pull open. Now you can see how many demo sites and things I have in here, including the original Who to Follow, but here's this one.
Yeah.
And it says it hasn't been deployed yet, but the connection has been made, and it'll take a minute or two.
Yeah, it'll take a minute on Netlify to like show. But then what we're trying to show you is, so we've connected like the Netlify, we've hosted like with Netlify just by clicking and then creating like the name of the URL and then just sending it. So the URL should be live when Netlify builds it.
Let me see if I do a refresh in Netlify. Oh, yep.
Oh,
looks
okay.
like it's done. And I think I kind of want to make sure. Yeah. So the reason this is so cool is Gatsby, even without incremental builds, doing builds in Gatsby, in theory, is going to be faster than doing builds in Netlify. So if you run a Gatsby build in Gatsby versus in Netlify, it'll be faster over there. And then at the end of that build, all Gatsby has to do is send over those already built assets. So like with my site before doing this, it is running the build command inside of Netlify itself. Here, the build command is happening in Gatsby, and it's just sending over those files. So it's almost instantaneous. As soon as those files get over, the site is live and it's ready to go.
Yeah. We have this like really awesome sticker that I love. It's on I would have shown you, but it's on my dongle. It says my website is faster than yours. Like, nice. I really love that. Yeah. Nice. It's a humble brag.
I need to get one of those for my laptop.
Yeah. So we've seen that the site is live. Like all of this is like done with like Gatsby Cloud just by clicking and like setting up. Not so sure yet about Gatsby Cloud, but I don't think so. How Untitled does it on landscape buildings? Well,
He might be.
I think there's a.
He might be responding to a previous question. I think.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, but
about the batching of builds, I think is what he's responding to.
Yeah, so when we've seen like the awesomeness of like adding authentication to authorization to like a Gatsby site, like to show you that, oh look, you can actually do some app-like functionalities on Gatsby. So if you're trying to set up like a platform, like an e-commerce store where people can like upload products and then people can go buy, the same way you can add like authentication authorization, you can also add like stuff with image hosting or payments and all of that cool stuff. And also we've seen like Gatsby Cloud do like its thing and be like really easy to use. And maybe next time we can use like a CMS to show how incremental builds like works. But the like I explained already, the way incremental builds works is, so the first build is like fast because it builds everything and it kind of like holds like a baseline and it says, oh, if you make a content change or a content change, I will just compare that and build what's like in the middle without having to build every other thing that didn't change. So yeah. Do you have anything else, James?
I think mainly like I'm just so excited for like the landscape of web development that we live in. Like,
yeah,
I've said this recently, like at this point in my career, I'm just kind of excited to try different things and put them together to build cool stuff. And I think this is one of those examples, doing Gatsby, using Auth0 for authentication and authorization. We talked about like the difference between those two and how to validate API requests. Because the last thing you want to do is have like an API somewhere, serverless function or not, and have it be open to everyone. And then they like kill your server because they do something bad on your server. So yeah, I think that was really cool to me and I think for all of us to kind of figure out how to tie this in with Gatsby. That's really exciting. Yeah, I don't know. There's really just like no limitations with Gatsby. And I've been trying to change the way that I talk about Gatsby because I did the like static site generator pitch before, but it's a whole lot more and it can do like anything that you want it to.
So we call it a PWA generator. Okay. So that's like if you Google like what's Gatsby JS, that's what you see. Because it's like you said, it's more than just a static site generator. Like it's awesome.
Cool. Well, I'll leave with, if anyone has any other questions about any of this, including Auth0 or the pieces that aren't Auth0, feel free to reach out to me. I am James Q Quick on Twitter and all social media. And then also my email at Auth0, if you have a question there, is james.quick@auth0. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, I just put your Twitter and mine. So yeah, please, I'm happy to answer any questions about Gatsby. I usually tweet this like every other day, like, oh, if you say Gatsby 3 times in front of your computer, I will appear. Yeah, I'm super excited to like. I tweet also about breaking stuff while learning to like make stuff, which is a really big part of my job. You would not believe how many times I see errors. I'm like, oh, what is this?
It's just part of the process, I think.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, thank you so much, James, for like joining us and like explaining all of this awesome stuff. And like, yeah, look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, everyone, joining on the stream.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you both, and thank you, Sally, for captioning. And we'll see you all soon.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.